Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the Walksnail Goggles L from CaddxFPV. These are exclusively for the Walksnail Avatar FPV system. So if you have something like the Go Film 20 with the Moonlight kit, or some kit that you maybe built up yourself that has got a Walksnail video transmitter in it, these could be used with it. Of course, with the L meaning light, this is aimed at a more budget segment of the market, with the price point being $199. I did ask this time. The product page isn't available yet, so I went ahead and asked. Just to go around the product real quick. So we've got this light up front. That's the one interface difference that I can tell you about, is that this light is not RGB. You can't change it to different colors like you can on the Goggles X. It's just an on-off feature. Over here around the side, we have our 5D button. So if you're in the interface, you press down on it to activate, and then you use the joystick like 5D to drive the interface. Then we've got our back button, so if you need to jump backwards on the interface, you use this button right here. And then the next button is our record button to start and stop manual recordings, which is how I like to use. This is our little linking pinhole. Something interesting about the linking pinhole that I found is typically I can use this little driver. It's a 1.3 millimeter hex driver, and it's got a really fine tip on it, and I could put that in there. But because it's got two different sizes here at the head, I couldn't get it deep enough through the pinhole. So the outer edge of the hole is just a little bit smaller than I've seen previously with goggles. Not a big deal because paperclip works perfectly. Unfortunately for me, I had to go upstairs and into the kitchen and into one of those junk drawers that contains all the stuff you have in a household that you don't know where else to put it. Find a paperclip, come down and use that. Not a big deal. It's just funny to me that the tool I've been using for so many years now to do this sort of linking stuff didn't quite fit in that pinhole. Of course, it's got a strap with a bigger portion here on the back side. Strap is pretty flexible. It's not overly flexible. If you have been around the Orca goggles and their strap, this isn't nearly as flexible as those. I always felt those were maybe just a touch weak. This seems to be pretty standard. Of course, we've got our clip here on the side. You can see mine's adjusted way down because I have a ginormous head. And then we've got our straps here on the outside. I'm certain that we could probably find with these other straps, fat straps, rat straps, whatever straps are available out there, you could replace this. But do note that it doesn't have the third position that comes over your head and comes to the front of the goggles. We also have some venting here on the side. That is used for just airflow, I believe. You can't hardly hear the fan inside if there is a fan. I think there is because I kind of feel a vibration. If I really focus, I can kind of feel a vibration, but fan, I can't say with any certainty. There is one oddity that I can show you right off the bat, and that is for your SD card, whether you would need to upgrade firmware, which a new firmware came out for this about a week ago, so I've been through that process. Works like it does with anything else, but the SD card is kind of hidden underneath the faceplate here. So, kind of an odd spot for an SD card, especially if you're going to have to get it out very often, but I guess it is what it is. I can't move it now. I would have preferred to see it, even off the side here or even off the bottom. We've seen that on goggles. That just seems like a peculiar place. As far as the foam goes, it's not like other foam that I felt. It's a little bit comparable to HD0 foam. It's kind of a neoprene type of foam. It's a little bit thicker than it is on the HD0 goggles, and it actually feels a little bit more refined. I think on the HD0 goggles, the edges aren't as covered like these. It has the same sort of feel, soft, silky feel all the way around. As far as fitment on the face, I wear glasses, and these work fine. And oftentimes with the HD0 goggles, or not HD0, HD-based goggles, they do work fine for me. Where it analog, it's not always the case. Inside, I haven't done a teardown. I think we'll probably see Mads Tech, Ian from Mads Tech, do a full teardown. That's kind of his specialty. He really gets into the nitty gritty of the electronics, more as I'm kind of just a use case, or I just use them like anyone else would, and then I tell you about them. The screen feels to be, it's on top, and then inside we have a mirror at an angle in here, so we're kind of looking in the mirror and then we're seeing the screen up top. I say that for two reasons. One, you can feel the heat up top, which I'll talk more about heat in just a moment. But if you move the goggles ever so slightly, or they sit a little bit, you know, tilted down on your face, you'll be able to see the edge of both the screen as well as the edge showing in the mirror. So you kind of get that doubling effect rather than just seeing the image itself that's from the screen. So if they sit a little awkward on your face down, you'll notice that. I suppose the same could be said if it's shifted upwards too. While we're talking about the fitment, before we get back to the heat, the nose cutout here, it does leave a slight impression on my nose, which I think I've been told I have somewhat of a Western average nose. It didn't bother me. I certainly didn't feel it pinching on my nostrils to where I would feel like, you know, I couldn't breathe and I had to be a mouth breather. If you couldn't hear me or understand me, I didn't feel it stop me from being able to breathe normally through my nostril. It was more up on the bridge of my nose where I could feel it. So it had to have been this part right here that was hitting me in the nose. And I did notice that after a series of flights that I did where I was testing the heat, that I did have a red mark. I came inside and we've got a mirror in the kitchen that I can see a little red mark there, but it wasn't something that bothered me during flight. But that's not going to be the same for everyone because we all got different sizes of shapes of face and size of noses. As far as the heat, one of the things that I wanted to test, because it's hot here, was how does the unit handle staying under power and staying under use in heat. So for nearly 40 minutes, pretty much straight, you know, battery after battery after battery, I sat out in the heat, and the heat was about 97 degrees. I was not in direct sunlight at that point in time. I just couldn't take it. It was humid too. So it was kind of a smoking bad day as far as a human being outside. I was sitting in the cabana area, which does have shade. I did not turn the ceiling fan that's on over there. I just sat in the heat, but in the shade. And I ran, like I said, battery after battery after battery. It worked normally. That was one of my concerns because we've seen with other, like the Goggles X, that heat can be an issue. I did feel the warmth of the screen, especially over time. It didn't seem to be getting hotter. I don't have like a thermal gun to where I can take a temperature reading. I was just touching it just to see, you know, how's it doing. But really when it came down to flight, I didn't find it was stuttering. I didn't find that there was, I actually did some playback at the very end before I came back inside just to see if the DVR would act funny, possibly because everything was all warmed up and we're sitting in the heat. DVR played normally as well. So I was pleased that being out in the heat for about 45 minutes, it was at least 40 minutes. I was timing it on my watch. But I may have been out there an extra minute or two as, you know, gathering my things and then coming inside because I did not turn the goggles off until I came all the way into the house. So I was pleased to find that at least the heat in my testing, running battery after battery, it worked normally there. Some of the things I haven't covered yet, it goes 2 to 6S on our battery. It does come with a really soft XT60 to barrel connector that you plug in, and we've also got another port down here which is our 3.5 millimeter jack. Isn't it 3.5? I think it's, yeah, 3.5 millimeter port. That is for the head tracking. I did not test head tracking because I don't have anything set up with head tracking. I just fly quads. I did test it with 2 different quads, as I said, the GoFilm 20, which I already have up here, and then a Whoop, a 1S VTX Lite kit that I wanted to test as well. In my testing, I think that the antennas that they have included in the front, we potentially, again, I suspect Ian over at Madstech, if you're not familiar with his channel, shame on you, but I'll link his channel down below so you can maybe go subscribe to his channel and look at the teardown. If his video is available right away, I'll point you to the teardown. I think there's one antenna, at least one antenna, that's omnidirectional and one that's a patch. Now, I have no evidence for this because, again, I haven't taken these apart. But the reason why I think that is because I tend to face one side of the yard as I'm sitting at the table in my chair. And then I was flying and just kind of doing some initial testing. And I flew behind myself and I actually sat down behind, the quad sat down behind the grill. And it's got that stone front to that countertop area. So I definitely wasn't in front of me. And I wasn't in line of sight. And that was one of the things that surprised me was if those are patch antennas that are inside, at least both of them, that I would have expected the signal to degrade when I did that. And I really didn't experience any signal degradation behind me at all. So As far as the interface inside, the only difference that I can see is that one thing that I called out already, and that's the ability to turn on the LED light or turn it off. It does not have other color options at this time. I don't expect to see that, but potentially we could. It's terribly difficult to film in here. I tried a couple times with a couple different cameras. I think I actually just need a GoPro with some sort of fixed focus length or something on it to where I can get it in there. But essentially, if you have seen the video on the Goggles X, or if you saw the video on the VRX, the interface looks the same, it acts the same, it has essentially all the same functions and features, as I can tell, except for the LED side. The VRX goggles, or VRX interface, does not have any LED light section. The Goggles X, the LED option allows you to change colors because it turned this on to blue. And this one, it's just on and off. As far as light leak goes, so with the lighting that I've got here, I'm going to go ahead and just put the goggles on. Outside, didn't notice any light leak. Wasn't looking for it either. It's one of those things when we do goggle reviews that we're really sensitive to, is that, oh, we're looking for the light leak. And then you go fly and there's just no issue with the light leak. You're just looking at the screen and you go fly and have some fun. So I'm going to go ahead and put them on now. And with this lighting, I'm going to describe the light leak that I have. You know, of course, all of our faces are different. There's only one foam pad that comes with this thing. So whether it's the same for you or different, we can't really determine that. So it's kind of a exercise in futility, but we'll do the exercise. All right, I've got the goggles sitting on my face, right below my nose here, you know, right where I've got my finger. It's not light leak. I could just, well, it's light leak. I just can't see through that area. It's kind of on both sides of my nose, right on the way my nose flares. It doesn't fill the channel down here. On this side, no, like right here by my eyes, I can, it's more on this side. My head must not be evenly shaped. I can see my finger over here on this side a little bit more. On this side, I can't hardly, I can't see my finger. There's just light differences when I move my finger around. So I can see my finger on this side, and if I move the goggles around, let's see. Or if I make the strap tighter, that stuff might go away. Well, now I can barely see my finger on this side, like some light changes. And over here, I hope I'm somewhere near the camera. If I pull my skin like this, I can actually see the light poking through. But as far as across my brow, nothing. As far as coming through the plastics that make up the goggles, I don't see anything that would be leaking through the plastics. I just have a touch of light I can see down here through my nose if I stare at it. The little area is right down in here. I don't mean to be gross, but you know, that's where the leak is. And then on this side, it's much more predominant, the light that's coming through. And this is pretty dim over here. So, light leak test. And we got a little bit of a nose wearing or bridge test there too. So, and I wasn't even recording all that long, maybe a couple minutes. So we've kind of covered the goggles. I think they work fine as far as how they feel in the hand. They're very solid. They're not flimsy or plasticky. They don't feel like they're going to come apart. It doesn't feel like I can even actually pull them apart. I'll be interested to see how Ian does his tear down, because I think he's going to probably have to use a spudger and snap some things apart, because as far as the build goes, it's really clean. There's not a lot of screws. I think there's probably maybe a screw or two underneath this foam. But it'll be interesting to see that. I would encourage you, if you're interested in those details, as well as his opinion about how the goggles, I'm sure he'll have a set, and you should check it out. Where I struggle in all goggle reviews is it's hard to just like show them to you, because it's all about how does it feel on your face, what's the experience like, and that's where I've kind of all along the way in this video just said it's been kind of normal. It's just worked. My initial impressions after I got the goggles and got them set up and came outside, of course I'd had them on my face, you know, just kind of tuck them in there when I was setting up the quads. But my initial impression when I went out to fly, it felt like the image was far away, further away than I was used to. And most of the time when I'm flying, I'm using goggles like the Goggles X or the Fat Shark HD, whatever they're called, the Walksnail version. So that is one difference that I can tell you about outside of the price point with the Goggles L versus the Goggles X, or versus maybe using the VRX on something else. But that went away in pretty short order, especially when I came inside to fly the Whoop after I'd kind of gotten all heated up outside. I came inside and flew the Whoop around. It just kind of all evaporated. Now, that might not be the way everyone perceives that. So I bring it up only because we're all unique, and sometimes some of us adjust to things. Other times it takes others longer to adjust, or you just don't adjust at all. I have talked to many people that started with the VRX, and they just could not adjust to the latency. It didn't bother me. Yeah, I noticed it at first, but I adjusted to it. Some people would go through 50 flights and they just could not get over that. And so they would have to move from the VRX into something like the Goggles X. It's something I can't tell if it will impact you or not. It's just something that I have to include because you need to know. I think where this product belongs in the market, at $199, I need to look to see what the VRX is currently costing. I think it puts the Walksnail Avatar video system maybe potentially in reach for more people at $199 versus something that's like, I think these are still $499. You may be able to find these brand new at $399 or thereabouts. I haven't looked at the current market, but that's something that you should do because essentially they all function the same with the exception of antenna options. And of course, they're going to look and feel a little bit different on the face as well. But if you can find these goggles, they would be an option. And then maybe if secondhand, you might be comparing price points of secondhand Goggles X or what have you to these as well. Now, if you're going secondhand, you know, there's always a substantial risk of someone being nefarious and up to no good. But if you're just looking at the price points, that is probably what you're probably looking at as price point. And that's where $199, I think, puts this in a nice format to where if someone doesn't want to go the VRX route or doesn't want to worry about the adaptability of themselves to the latency that going from the VRX to HDMI through their goggles might introduce, or the limitation of their goggles and not having the full image quality and frame rates, that this then puts you in that category. I did test the various frame rates, 2 different cameras at least, high bit rate, low bit rate. It just kind of worked normally. So I think it really comes down to price point. Now, if your primary concern is range, like you want to go a long ways away, I'm of course not testing that for you, but I think if that is your number one concern, I want to go a long ways away in my flight, I'm going to be flying Walksnail, then you've got to look at goggles that give you more antenna options. You just do. To get the best possible range, you're going to need to use patch antennas that are pointed in the direction of your flight. So this, while it might have a patch antenna in the front and you can point it in that direction, possibly, if you're not like me and I keep my head down, if you can keep your head focused in the direction of your flight, these might work fine for you, or at least close to equally. But optimally, you would have 1 or more antennas that are patch antennas, high gain patch antennas that are directional and are pointing in your direction of flight. So I think if range or your absolute long distance range is your highest priority, you've got to go with options that allow you to buy aftermarket antennas, patch antennas, that you can point in the direction of your flight. If you're looking at general purpose flying, in my experience, these work perfectly fine. And for $199, it's really hard to complain about really anything at all other than you don't get a case. There is no case that comes with this. Not a silk bag, not a case, nothing like that. It comes in a box that you could double as a case that has this foam padding inside of it here. And then we've got our accessories, which is essentially just a cleaning cloth and the power connector inside. So that's the one complaint I think I have and that others might have, is that you don't have a case for these particular goggles. So if you want a case, you've got to wait for an aftermarket case, or maybe Caddx has got one that they'll launch at the same time. I'm just not aware of them having a case of this particular goggle set. So I think they're very viable in the market. It just comes down to, I think, some of those things that we're talking about with range and price point, and whether these are going to be the goggles for you. They're very, as far as the distance between the foam padding and the little lens that's in here, it's not very deep. So if you're thinking about, you know, taking glasses that are real small and putting them in there, my size of glasses don't fit. They'll need to be substantially smaller than that. You might be able to take a lens from a magnifying headset like I've got here, and you might be able to stick them in there. It's going to take some modification if you can see that, but you can kind of put them in there just like that. Of course, you got to find the distance away from your own eyes, and with the magnifying lens that's already in there, that's viable. But this is about the size of glasses that you would need to buy in order to be able to stick them inside as well, if you were to need them. I don't want to tell anybody they may or may not need something like that, because, again, we all have very unique vision. If your vision's 20/20, it'll work for you. If you're farsighted, slightly, like I am, these will probably work for you as well. As far as any other vision, I don't know. I wish I could tell you more, but I am not a doctor. What an eye doctor? I forget what they're called. I have to go to see them all the time. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise about the Goggles L, please let me know in the section down below, the comments section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.